The 2025 NFL offseason is here for the Atlanta Falcons. You've already seen them start making moves like signing future players to future contracts, a new defensive coordinator in Jeff Ulbrich. So now it's time to look at what a perfect offseason, in my opinion, for the Atlanta Falcons to get them back on track to win the division and back in the playoffs. Before any type of moves can happen in the offseason, you have to look at the cap space. The Falcons are currently sitting at just over negative $10 million. First, we have to look at how can we make wiggle room? How can we add money? Because we have players to resign, we have draft picks to sign, and we have free agent targets that we need to go after. Let's talk restructures. Who are we going to restructure? Now, if you're unsure of what a restructure is, it's essentially kicking the can down the road. You're still going to pay the player what you agreed upon. It's just not going to hit this year. You restructure players like Chris Lindstrom, that saves you almost $10 million. AJ Terrell, that can save you over $9.5 million. And then Darnell Mooney, that could save you just under $4 million. Now, the biggest one that could happen, I don't think it should happen, but if the Falcons are in a pinch, it's restructuring Kirk Cousins' contract. Of course, we don't really want to do that because the biggest hit for his contract will be done after the 2025 season, and then the Falcons will see relief. So to move money from the 2025 season and potentially spreading out to the 2026-2027 season could make sense. According to Over the Cap, a restructure could save the Falcons just under $17.5 million. Now, if you do all these restructure, it could save the Falcons over $41 million. Now, when you do the math, that puts the Falcons just over $31 million in cap space. Still not a whole lot, but now you have some breathing room. But now we have to have the hard discussion, cap casualties. Now, when you're making cap casualty, the cap numbers can be manipulated based off when they're cut. June 1st is that sweet spot. Are you cutting them before June 1st, or are you designating them as a post-June 1st cut? This, at times, designating players as post-June 1st will save you more money against your cap space and minimize your dead cap. But the thing is, NFL teams are only allotted 2 players to be designated as post-June 1st cuts, which is totally fine because there are only really 3 players I think could be cap casualties. The first being our kicker, Younghoe Koo. I believe he'll be a post-June 1st cut. He'll save the Falcons over $4.2 million. That's quite a bit of money for an NFL kicker that saw a down year, battled injuries all year. Could the Falcons bring him back on a much cheaper deal? Absolutely. I think he's brought back in camp, but then they also bring other kickers because the kicking game was a big issue in the 2024 season. Another player I could see designated as a post-June 1st cut is defensive tackle David Onyemata. David Onyemata's production really dipped in his second year in Atlanta. He signed a 3-year deal coming over from New Orleans. Designating him as a post-June 1st cut would save the Falcons over $10.5 million. It makes sense. Onyemata's over 30 years old. The production is not there. The other one is the hardest to talk about because of what he means to the city of Atlanta and the organization of the Atlanta Falcons, and that's defensive tackle Grady Jarrett. Cutting Grady Jarrett would save the Falcons over $16 million. Grady Jarrett has done so much for the Falcons. He's been a consistent force. Last year, man, coming back from that ACL tear, he just did not look the same. Am I open for him to return on a vet minimum deal, kind of like the Eagles did for Fletcher Cox? Absolutely. If all these players were to be cap casualties, the Falcons would then save $31 million. That's a lot of money that they don't currently have. Now that we've had those hard conversations, we've made those cuts, we need to look at potential trade candidates that would make sense to save the Falcons money. The first one being is Kyle Pitts. His name has been brought up multiple times by different media outlets. It looks like that could catch some steam. Now, I know a lot of people are emotionally tied to Kyle Pitts and think he can thrive under Michael Penix Jr. as the quarterback, which I don't disagree. Maybe there's a chemistry built there. Maybe something can happen there. The problem is the type of offense the Atlanta Falcons are running, Zach Robinson's offense, showed me exactly that the tight end position is not a focal point in the passing game. They are more of like an extra offensive lineman to help in run support and pass protection. Now, I will say Kyle Pitts did improve in his pass protection. He did improve in his run blocking, but it's still not enough for what the Falcons need on offense to take that next step. Trading Kyle Pitts away would save the Falcons just under $11 million with no dead cap. He is playing on his 5th-year option. The team that trades for him would then eat all of that money. Now the big kahuna. It's Kirk Cousins, because I can tell you right now, Kirk is not going to get cut no matter what. It does not make sense for the Falcons to have to eat all that money and not save any whatsoever. I know he's got a $10 million bonus that'll hit in 2026. We're still saving over $30 million next year if we cut him. It does not make sense for the Falcons to cut him and then him be able to sign and potentially play for another team. Kirk Cousins currently has a no-trade clause, a full no-trade clause in his contract. The Falcons, I believe, are trying to force Kirk's hand and pretty much tell him, if you think you can still play in this league, you need to waive that no-trade clause and find a trade partner. Now, just like with cap casualties, you can designate trades. If Kirk Cousins is traded prior to June 1st, the Falcons save $2.5 million this year, and then it just goes up from there. We'll see a lot more alleviation in the cap space the following and the next year in 2027. However, if a team is willing to deal with the Falcons, the best case scenario is to designate him as a post-June 1st trade. This would save the Falcons $27.5 million right off the bat. A huge chunk of change, a huge relief. Of course, this is the most unlikely thing to happen. Kirk Cousins is going to be a focal point, whether it's a restructure, which I really don't want them to do, but if they're in a pinch, you got to do what you got to do, or a trade, which is the most likely scenario to happen. Now we get some good news. What some of you might not know is if a player is currently signed under contract and you sign them to an extension, well, that gives you alleviation in the cap space as well. There are 2 players I think the Falcons should go ahead and extend right now before their contracts is up. First being our wide receiver 1, Drake London. He is going into his 4th year of his rookie deal. Rather than paying him his 5th-year option, pay him now and you save another $2 million against the cap. Not a lot, but you take care of him. It's in the good graces. You don't have any type of holdouts, etc., etc. The other player being Jesse Bates. He's been an all-pro since being with Atlanta. He's been a Pro Bowler. He was snubbed this year. He has been your focal point on your defense and a difference maker since he entered the building in Atlanta. Extending Jesse Bates would alleviate another $10.1 million this coming year and the next. Don't let him hit free agency. Now, with all these moves, here are the different scenarios on how much the Falcons could save. With no Kirk Cousins moves, if the Falcons just sit on his contract but are able to work everything else out that I listed prior, Falcons would save over $66 million, which would then give them over $56 million to play with a Kirk Cousins restructure. The Falcons save over $84 million, which then lets them play with $74 million of that. Remember, the Falcons are negative to start the offseason. Now, if the Falcons do trade Kirk Cousins as a pre-June 1st, in addition to everything else, it would save $69 million, which would then give them $59 million to play with. Now, the biggest option, right? We talked about trading him as a post-June 1st. The Falcons would save over $94 million if they completed everything that I listed off, which would give them $84 million to go into free agency, the draft, and re-signing players. An unreal amount of money that they don't currently have. Of course, NFL teams don't make all these moves. This is just my perfect scenario if I were the Falcons GM. Now we're moving on to players that are set to be free agents that were on the Falcons roster. There are several that I would bring back to be starters and also some depth pieces. Some guys that were rotated in that showed signs be worthy to bring back and wouldn't break the bank. The players I would bring back: Kyle Hinton, Ryan Newziel, Storm Norton, Damone Harris, our special teams ace Kadero Hodge, Kevin King, and then I'd also re-sign Mike Hughes to a 3-year deal. Mike Hughes is only 27 and he's not going to break the bank. Now, Drew Dahlman, our center. I know a lot of people are ready for him to walk. A lot of people think he's going to cost way too much, but the center market is not as high as people think. Drew Dahlman, also 27 years old, I think should sign a 3-year deal as well for about $30 million, which would put him about $10 million average per year. This puts him in the same range as Commander center Tyler Biadasz. Dahlman isn't the greatest center in the league, but he does bring continuity. He has an understanding of the offense. He is the general of the offensive line and has taken the snaps with Michael Penix. I know a lot of you guys say Ryan Nuzeel did fine. Ryan Nuzeel did fine. Ryan Nuzeel was good, but not as good as Drew Dalman. So now we go to free agent targets. Who are we going to go after? Obviously, it's got to be defense. Well, you're correct. So let's start off by the players that I think the Falcons could target and who I think the priority target should be based off the skill set and how I think they would fit this defense. Starting off in corner, there are 4 names I'm looking at. 49ers Trevarius Ward, New York Jets DJ Reed, Chargers Asante Samuel Jr., and Dallas Cowboy Jordan Lewis. All of these guys I think are worth signing. I don't think they're going to break the bank. My priority signing is Asante Samuel Jr. I think he could play that outside corner position. His defense is still going to be most likely running cover 3, cover 1. He was hurt this prior year for the Chargers, and I believe the Chargers move on from him because of what they had in their rookie class this past season. Now we're looking at inside linebackers, and there are only 2 names, and I'd be good with either one. I think the Falcons need to be aggressive in the inside linebacker signings because linebacker was one of the weakest positions for the Falcons in the defense. The 2 names include Dre Greenlaw of the 49ers and Nick Bolton of the Chiefs. Of the 2, I would like Nick Bolton more just because he's got more youth. He doesn't have any major lower body injuries. He did have an elbow injury a couple years prior, still wears an elbow brace, but you could sign someone like that to a 5-year deal, about $84 million. It's not the top of the linebacker market, but you're cracking, top 5 paid linebacker money. He's a 3-down Mike linebacker, and you can persuade him to signing that lengthy contract because he will be 29 when that contract's up, so he could hit the market again and sign another contract. For Dre Greenlaw, I would be ecstatic if the Falcons signed him. He just brings the tenacity, that aggressiveness, that assertiveness that a linebacker needs to bring, and just that energy for the defense that I feel like it lacked prior season. My only concern is, of course, is his Achilles injury. Now, he did come back last season. In the one game, he showed flashes. He did not look like it bothered him at all. Now he's got another offseason to rest. The rest of his body was healing up as he did his recovery for the Achilles. So both linebackers, you cannot go wrong with them. Now we get to the edges, because with Jeff Ulbrich, I think we're going to see more of a 4-3 style defense. Of course, everyone talks about, we're going to be a nickel primarily. Yes, but you still need edge defenders, guys that can rush the passer that may be a little bit bigger, so it's quote unquote a heavier box when it's 1st and long or 2nd and short. You can still have good pass rushers, but also play the run. Now this is where we're going to go shopping. We're going to find the clearance section and get some guys that don't cost a lot, because I think the Falcons' focal point in this draft class will be the edge position. So we're looking at someone like Anthony Nelson from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Michael Hoyt of the Rams. He showed that he can be moved all over the place, and he's familiar with Raheem Morris. And the other one is someone like Baron Browning, who was on a contract year. He was traded from the Broncos to the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals make an aggressive push to re-sign him, but if the Falcons have that ability, they should definitely re-sign him. He's only 25. Get someone with speed on the edge. And someone that just announced that he is coming back is Khalil Mack. I know you're saying, I don't want any more of these old vets. Khalil Mack is different, okay? He still had 6 sacks last season, 17 and a half the year prior. He's had over 31 sacks in the past 3 seasons with the Chargers. His production is there. He does not have to be that every down edge guy, just in passing situations. The guy is a beast. I'm at least making an offer. Now we get to the defensive tackles. I also think this will be a focal point for the Falcons in the draft class. We're going to have to rotate a lot of guys, especially if you just cut Grady Jarrett, you just cut David Onyemata, you lose several defensive tackles to free agency. You have to re-sign some guys to replace them. The first name up is Javon Kinlaw. Another one being, he's a little undersized, but he has such quickness and the 3 technique. He's such an effective pass rusher at the defensive tackle. I'm going to butcher his name. It's Oza Ogodinzwe. Bruh. I butchered that. I know I did. But it's the Dallas Cowboys defensive tackle. Another former Ram, Bobby Brown III, only 24 years old. That big body, nose tackle style player that can play that 1-3 technique, that can just take on double teams and still get tackles for loss. Also familiar with Raheem Morris. Now we get to the back end, the safety position. The experiment with Justin Simmons did not work out. We need youth, and we need a true strong safety, someone that will stick their nose in and run fit when needed, but can also cover on the back end if Jesse Bates becomes a robber or he has the run support. There are 3 names I'm really looking at. It's Julian Blackmon of the Indianapolis Colts, Talanoa Hufanga. I know there's injury concerns there, but we need a little bit of Samoan blood on this Falcons defense. And the last one being Justin Reed, a very smart football player, can play coverage. Man, does he shoot in run support. He flashes all the time. Any of these three strong safeties would make an impact immediately. Now you're going to ask me, well, what about the draft? What do the Falcons do in the draft? That's going to be for another video. Guys, if you enjoyed video like this, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. We're getting into draft season. So we're going to be doing a lot of draft prospect film reviews on potential players the Falcons may take, whether it's in the first, second, fourth, or seventh round. But until then, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Until next time, rise up.